Yeah, sounds good. Well, welcome everybody. It's the top of the hour here. It's going to be a small crowd, at least probably from the U.S. here. Happy Memorial Day to everyone in the U.S. that's celebrating or recognizing those that gave all for this country. But I'm happy to be joining my friends from abroad here with Rocket Pool. Langers, good day to you.
Good day. How are you going?
I'm doing pretty good. The sun finally came out here in San Diego, so it's a nice, beautiful spring day, and temperature's starting to rise, and things are good. Had a little bit of chance here to just kind of peruse the internet ahead of this call, and it's been a busy work week for me, so I kind of behind a little bit in my rocket pool land. So I'm kind of excited to see what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, there's a fair amount going on actually. So yeah, let's go.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I thought today we talk about a couple of things. I did see an announcement just maybe about a day ago, less than 24 hours ago, about the node operator queue being cleared. I thought we could talk about that. Mav wanted us to mention the Saturn audits and kind of the R&D progress that's going on. I think something might have happened with Ronin here, a little bit of exciting news, and kind of there. I know you were on a podcast earlier in the week that I haven't had a chance yet to queue up on my iPad here, but and then there was a biweekly that got sent out. I figured we could cover some of the highlights of the biweekly as well too. Does that sound like a pretty good plan?
That is awesome.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and maybe let's just start with backtracking a little bit. Let's start off with Ronin a little bit. What's the latest with Ronin, and is there any correlation between them and the queue getting cleared?
So yeah, so as you said, actually I'll kind of rewind to probably quite a few weeks ago, months ago actually almost. So we were working with Alpha Growth on kind of like working with Ronin and introducing rETH to Ronin. So Ronin is an L1, but uh, it's kind of like a game. I don't know if people aren't kind of aware. It's like a game focused or gaming focused sort of L1. And so they were interested in getting rETH onto Ronin for kind of like different reasons. I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. But so uh, they were interested in that. Alpha Growth put together kind of like a deal where they would mint some rETH and um, put it on Ronin essentially. There were a few things that we needed to kind of sort out. So we put together CCIP or the chain link bridging system is their kind of canonical bridging solution. So we had to work with Chainlink a little bit to set that up and get that kind of running. There was a lot of talk about whether we would have like a transfer fee and that sort of thing. In the end, we decided to not go with the transfer fee, but I think it may come up again in the future if we decide to kind of like change that position. Um, and so yeah, so we set up the bridge, and then we've been kind of working with them on the minting stuff, and then I went on their kind of um, Twitter space, yeah, or kind of like Twitter space and type thing, essentially a community call, and and kind of went through what rETH is and how awesome it is and all of that sort of thing, and what kind of things Ronin, what opportunities there are for Ronin really, because Ronin is actually quite a unique um, environment. It's not kind of like the usual DeFi chain because it focuses on gaming. So there is actually a couple of interesting use cases for a liquid staking token. So things like you know things like uh, gamers depositing ETH as kind of like a bond, and then the developers themselves staking it and then earning kind of like money from that kind of process to pay for the kind of development of the game and that sort of thing. So essentially, there's like a business model use case there. There's also obviously the kind of like financial game type or rewards aspect as well. So, using the yield from a liquid staking token to provide some sort of incentive for play and that sort of thing. So it's quite interesting. And so we've been working with them quite a bit. There's still, in terms of whether those big deposits are related to them. Um, I no, I don't think so. That's not from our communications. It's not. Um, I think the community did a little bit of research as well, and I think that we're not quite sure where they came from, which is kind of like the usual. Um, so yeah, it's not. So that's not related to them necessarily.
Oh, interesting. And then with Ronin, is it set up? Can I actually acquire rETH on Ronin, or can I bridge my rETH over to Ronin?
Yeah, you can. So the bridging is in place, and there is like a liquidity provider or liquidity platform or swap platform on there. Now I can't remember the name of it now, but there is like a swap platform on there that has liquidity for rETH. So yes, that's possible now.
Oh, excellent. Wow. Very, very exciting to kind of see that come through. Yeah, I remember a lot of the early conversations with, like you said, alpha growth and kind of a little bit of debate and discussion about, should there be a toll on the bridge? And so that's interesting to see it kind of come to fruition here. And I guess ultimately with Chainlink, I guess there was a little bit of thought about I don't know, keeping that under control or whatever. But is that now Chainlink? Is that just kind of a permanent installation there with not only Ronin but with other either EVM alt layer ones or layer twos?
So at the moment, it's just Ronin, and I think we can probably take it on a case by case basis. Um, I think in some cases it makes sense to use a CCIP. Um, in other cases, maybe not. And so that's why we probably it needs to be on a case by case basis. But I mean, in the situation where they don't have a canonical bridge, or 'cause usually we would use the canonical bridge, and that makes it super easy because in general it's run by the same people who run the um, the L1 or the L2. Where there is some interesting kind of like we're working with Wormhole a little bit as well, and there is some, I guess, there's also some uh, business development reasons why we would also go with other providers as well. So, for example, Wormhole has connections with other chains that would then do incentives through Wormhole, for example, if we bridge through Wormhole. So there's a few different things, and so that's why I say I think we should take it on a case by case basis. That said, we've got a good relationship with Chainlink, and we definitely use them again. It's just we need to evaluate what the best outcome is for Rocketpool essentially.
Excellent, excellent. Well, maybe let's pivot here a little bit and talk what the team has been up to, right? I guess you're still progressing greatly through Saturn here. You want to give us an update as to what the team's been up to and what's coming up in the weeks ahead?
Yeah, sure. So with Saturn, so in terms of development, obviously we've pushed out DevNet 2, and we're going to be doing some more testing of that as we go through. Um, that's getting a little bit easier to test now that Hoodie has calmed down quite a bit. So that's going to be like an ongoing thing for the next couple of weeks. But DevNet 3 is it's well underway. In fact, all of the contract stuff for DevNet 3 is basically done. Um, and we've been doing like a big code review kind of QA process on all of the DevNet 1, 2, and 3 sort of stuff. So that's kind of been ongoing as well. We've kicked off a lot of the smart node stuff for DevNet 3. So things like there's going to be a new reward tree spec and reward tree implementation. So this will be V11 now. So we're working on that. We've started the work on that. But then also kind of hooking up some of the new commands and things like so. Just to as a reminder, so DevNet 1 was the deposit process, so essentially depositing validators. DevNet 2 was our withdrawals and claiming, distributing rewards and ETH rewards and that sort of thing. And then DevNet 3 is more around the RPL side of things, so staking RPL, things like the voter share, which is the fee switch, colloquially the fee switch. So that's been going really well. So yeah, as I said, the contract side of things are done for DevNet 3, and so we're actually starting on DevNet 4 in terms of the contract side. But there's with DevNet 3, there was always a little bit more smart node side work to do than contract side. So we kind of expected that to be the case. So the smart node guys are working on that at the moment. In terms of other things that are kind of going on with Saturn as well, we've started the auditor shortlisting process. So we've got a list of, hang on, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 auditors. So we've got a short list of 6 auditors, and we are just kind of like they've given us essentially quotes for the work, and now we're kind of evaluating those quotes and kind of like negotiating with them a little bit, and then we will hopefully make a decision on the final 3 auditors that will actually audit Saturn by the end of the week, ideally, either by the end of the week or beginning of next week, but that's what we're kind of like aiming for. Yeah, so that's really cool, and some really great auditors in there. To be honest, I think we're probably a bit sport for choice. The auditors are really good.
Yeah, you mentioned that
Really good.
yeah, you mentioned the team was doing a code review. What for those that aren't educated like me on kind of the coding process? What is that? Is that like a pre-audit or just a review before you pass it off to the auditors?
Yes, it's a kind of like an internal audit, but obviously it definitely focuses a lot on it focuses a lot on the the functional aspects as well as the security aspects. So essentially it's kind of like an internal audit, and so we're just going through the code line by line, making sure that it kind of like meets the RPIPs, which Kane's done a fantastic job. So that's been really good. So make sure it meets the RPIPs, that there's kind of like no functional gaps or things like that. But then also keeping an eye out for like security issues as well. Obviously, with the security orders coming on board, that that's kind of like the main push. But from our side of things, it's kind of like the pre-check before we go into security audits, so that we can deliver the best. And also we're extremely across how Rocket Pool works and all of that sort of stuff. So it's essentially a pre-audit.
And then I think I understood you to say that you were hoping to review the quotes and the bids and kind of make a decision. And did you say you wanted to bring on 3 auditors for this next round? Three companies?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah, I think we pretty much always tried to do 3. Um, I think with the hotfix, I think the hotfix was the only one that we may have only used 1 auditor. But for like major, and this is by I would probably say this is the biggest release we've done since the actual like mainnet, the beginning mainnet release, and it's certainly going to cost us that. um, So yeah, it's a massive release. So we're kind of like being super cautious. We get these auditors to do kind of like a really big review of pretty much pretty much the entire code base. It's not quite all the code base, but with Saturn, pretty much everything has been touched. So it's almost like a completely full re-audit. So that's what the teams are going to be essentially tasked to do, is to kind of go through pretty much all the Rocket Ball code and kind of like audit it.
Yeah, perfect. And Lee in the chat just actually asked the next question I was thinking myself in the head, which is how far, so now that you're at this point, right? Maybe can you look forward just a little bit and tell us, okay, you're mentioning DevNet 4, you're getting the auditors queued up, but you haven't done a code freeze yet. Can you just foreshadow for us a little bit? Tell us like what you see as the steps to finalize Saturn. And Lee asked in the chat here, if you can also add how far we are, or if we're on track or behind track, and when might you actually think Saturn might launch? What's lead us from this point forward. What are you thinking?
So I think I would probably. I have been kind of quite heads down, and so I need to kind of like look up a bit more. I can give you kind of like a rough answer now, and then maybe I'll give a bit more of an answer later on. But um, I would say we're at least 4 weeks, kind of like later than we want it to be in terms of the current timeline. Um, I'd say at least 4 weeks, probably more like 5 to 6 weeks. It, uh, as I said, DevNet 4 is a lot easier. So that's where I was kind of make some time. There is still a few little things kind of like hanging over us. So we've been kind of like moving forward. There are a couple of things that we just need to like nail down as well. So I still think we can make a little bit more of that time up, but it's very likely that we'll take up most of that time to fix up these kind of like last little bits. So I think on the original schedule, I think we said July. Um, so it's probably more likely to be. Let me just double check the original schedule.
Yeah, I was kind of recalling early Q3, but I don't think we ever
Yeah,
really
yeah. So I
set a
said so
timeline.
originally. Yeah, really. Originally, it was kind of like a mainnet launch in July. I am. It's very likely that it'll be kind of like August. Um, uh, yeah, definitely after July. Um, but probably more likely August, September-ish. But I'm hoping we can rein it in and keep it in August.
Wow, I was going to say that's a little bit more optimistic than I was thinking here, and even Lee had said, are you thinking August and September is still possible, or are we thinking, October and November, December type thing? So this still sounds very much uh, promising to me, but am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, it depends a little bit on the auditor timelines, which we're still like nailing down. At the moment, I think they're kind of like after. That's why I'm kind of like wanting to try to give you an answer later because I need to plan out that last little bit. Um, but I tried to rein it into August. It's very likely to be August, September. I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that that'd be good. It sounds optimistic, but yeah, I think now that we're getting closer, and that's certainly within a 3 to 4 month span horizon here, right? As we're coming up almost to the start of June, it might be good to kind of think it through a little bit here, and then especially between what it is you need of the community. Should we be testing stuff up? I know, at least myself, I haven't yet had the opportunity to spin up one of the DevNet ones, mainly waiting for the hoodie thing to kind of elapse and just trying to find some time on my calendar. But I think it's when do we start having to test it on yeah, on Hoodie as like the release, or are we going to go through kind of a planned test upgrade on Hoodie? And when do you expect those things to go, or have you not thought about the details yet?
I think what's a good idea is that I go through and update the NVIDIA timeline. So, and kind of like do it properly with a proper like announcement and that sort of stuff. Because then I can actually lay it all out. At the moment, I've got gut feels. Um, I will I need to actually put like the the kind of because we've been working basically just DevNet by DevNet, but I do think that we're at the stage now where I can kind of start projecting out a bit more um, and lay out that timeline a bit better. In terms of testing, so the current DevNets are available for you to test. They are, I would say, still slightly scrappy. Um, I would probably say DevNet 3 is probably where we get um, it, we get it a lot more solid. Like DevNet 1 it wasn't too bad. DevNet 2, there are a couple of things that we just need to kind of like fix up. DevNet 3 is going pretty well. So I think DevNet 3 is where most people should probably join in the testing effort once we release DevNet 3. DevNet 4, they're kind of like DevNet 4 is a bit more is kind of like the last little bits. So essentially, most of the work is DevNet 1, 2, and 3. So after DevNet 3, we're in a really really good place for people to test things end to end. Whereas with the current situation with DevNet 1 and 2, there's the kind of like the RPL staking part is all missing. So as I said, DevNet 3 is after we release DevNet 3 is probably the best time for people to join in the testing of the DevNets. We will be then releasing, once we've finished DevNet 4, we will be releasing to testnet. That will be kind of like um, that'll be more like um, that will be after some of the audits. Um, so we're actually, so that we've got kind of like a really good confidence that that's mostly what we're going to be going live with, because with testnet it's more of a dress rehearsal actually of the release and that sort of thing. So a testnet launch will be much later, but obviously with the devnets it means you guys can get involved super early whenever you want essentially, and so that the testing effort can start now. And that was kind of by design. We wanted to make sure that we get a lot of that testing effort and refinement done as early as possible, so it doesn't end up being near the end. But yeah, so that's there will be some testnet testing as well, but I think the majority of the testing will be after DevNet 3, in summary.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Anything else you want to cover on the Saturn progress, either to date or looking forward here, before we move a little bit to governance?
No, I mean, no, I mean it's been going really well. We'll have more. Um, Occasionally, we'll throw something in the research chat for kind of like community consultation as we go through the development process. There's always stuff that kind of comes up that we need to clarification on. So definitely keep an eye out in research if you want to be involved in that whole process. Um, that's we definitely appreciate people's help in terms of that. Yeah, yeah, and as I said, yeah, do get involved in the testing. Uh, we've got kind of like the DevNet set up. We'll release DevNet 3 when that's available, and then yeah, we've got loads of Hoodie ETH. Hoodie is actually getting better in terms of testing wise, so that's going to make it a lot easier.
Yeah, excellent. I was hoping that queue would become much more manageable, where you could sit down and spin up a test node and actually play with it at some reasonable period of time without waiting a week for the validator to be seen on the Hoodie beacon chain. Let me ask just a little bit as we pivot to governance, though, and kind of the back of my mind, I was thinking that there was there was some Saturn design governance decisions that we had kind of put off in the early phase, thinking, okay, we should vote as a PDAO and kind of answer these things or flush these things out. And somehow in my mind, and maybe I'm misrecollecting this thing, I was thinking it was before Saturn One launches, like some protocol settings. Do you recall by any chance, or for anybody listening and trading here, does anybody recall what those are? I'm kind of thinking with your timeline of, somewhere between 2 to 4 months from now, we might want to be thinking about if there is any design parameters that we need to finalize as a community prior to launch.
There were kind of like three things as from my memory. There was a bit around the deposit process, which we've ironed out, and that's all kind of sorted out. In fact, I think there was a follow-up RPIP on that and all of that sort of thing. Then there was um, the Saturn 2 value capture stuff. And I think it's all kind of like, so the value capture um, stuff and what the final parameters are for the, so currently there are default parameters for like the node commission and voter share and that sort of thing. Um, and so there was, so maybe there's a vote there in terms of just verifying that we want what values we want for those. Um, then the last bit is what the value capture method for Saturn 2 would look like. So whether it's like the mint and burn or the liquidity one and that sort of thing. Or the other option is basically to leave all voter share. So I think that was a vote that in the RPIPs it says that we should have before Saturn One goes live. So that's definitely key. Is kind of what the value capture mechanism looks like. But everything else seems to be going pretty well. As I said, we may want to lock down the commission numbers. But yeah, that's all I had really. Unless you guys do.
Yeah, no, that was kind of striking a chord in my memory there. So I think that's there, and yeah, maybe one of the things you could start doing, Langers, is to just signal to the community and prod us, because I do kind of feel that it's coming up, right, where if we need to bring it to a consensus vote or a snapshot vote or an on-chain vote, I'm kind of uncertain what we need to do to kind of finalize those settings. But it would be good as you're looking at the road ahead and kind of doing the final timing of the roadmap. Maybe you could identify those things and task the community with a deadline to get the decision turned in by some X date. But when we need it, so that way we're not waiting on any governance item prior to launch.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.
And then, kind of looking at the biweekly, there's a number of entries regarding governance that are in there, and I think one of the most interesting ones here was the exit of at least two ODAO nodes, and perhaps a transition from the PDAO Guardian. Would you maybe remind us what the PDAO Guardian is, and give us an update as to what this entry in the biweekly means?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the ODAO stuff. So there was an RPIP that was raised. I think it was, what was it, RPIP 61 or something like that? No, not 61. 68. So RPIP 68. RPIP 68 was essentially um, increasing the ODAO share to make sure that they've got some kind of like operational headroom for running the ODAO nodes. And so really what it did was it adjusted some of the inflation, but then also asked the ODAO to kind of like reduce its size by a couple of nodes. And the suggestion was that the team should probably take some of that hit, because we had four of the ODAO nodes. That was kind of like fair enough. We were kind of probably overrepresented on the ODAO side. Um, so we had to kind of like delay it slightly because of reward tree version 10. Reward tree version 10 introduced like a consensus sort of um, a potential consensus issue. So we had to wait until after that was live and made sure everyone was updated and all of that sort of stuff. But we exited two of our nodes, our Odo nodes. So by reducing the numbers of the ODAO nodes, it means that the obviously the share of ODAO inflation increases for each member. So that's why that's the case. So yeah, so two of our nodes are exited. I think there's actually one more which to be honest, I completely forgot about, and that is to Gitcoin said that um, they had their own reasons why they logistically they wanted to kind of like exit. So um, we will work with Gitcoin on exiting as well. So that'll be the last one. So then that means the ODAO will have 13 members, which is kind of like it's kind of like an arbitrary target, but that's the kind of like target size for the ODAO at the moment. We still have two, and then obviously the rest of the ODAO carried the rest of it. So yep. So now that's been going well. So I'll get Gitcoin to kind of like exit their node pretty soon. We kind of try to time it just after an interval because just to make sure that the interval gets as that sort of stuff. But that should be fine. And then in terms of the PDAO Guardian, so the PDAO Guardian is it's like a role within the system that the team currently has control over, and it allows for things like it allows to change certain settings, not every setting, but a lot of settings, and it allows things like there's like bootstrapping treasury payments and that sort of thing. So we've kind of like held that since we launched, but it was always kind of the intent to get rid of that once. Um, it was already the intent to get rid of that, but the steps to get rid of that were, very long. So we've now got obviously a now fully working and organized DAO. That was kind of like a key thing. And then the other part is we need to have a security council in place. That was all delivered in Houston, and because various, like again, various kind of things, hoops we had to jump through and that sort of thing. We're now at the point where we can actually disable the protocol DAO. Though there's one last step before we can disable the protocol DAO, and that's just we need to set up the Security Council. The community kind of bounced around a little bit, and at the moment there's not. I don't think there's not really consensus on community involvement in the Security Council. So, as part of the on-chain governance RPIP, it basically said that the team should play that role anyway. So we will essentially the last job of the PDAO Guardian will be to invite the team to the Security Council. We'll test out the Security Council just to make sure everything's working, and then we'll disable the protocol Guardian, the PDAO Guardian. Being on the Security Council, what that means is so one of the other roles of the protocol Guardian, which is the main reason actually protocol DAO Guardian, is that it has access to these parameters so that it can pause things in security events and that sort of stuff. So but then it also has all these other kind of like powers which are probably a bit more overpowered than we really want. So The idea is that we'll disable the PDL Guardian and we'll move ourselves over to the Security Council so that we can still do things like pausing of the protocol if things start going funny. But we can, but we don't have access to those kind of like more heavyweight powers that the PDL Guardian has. So that was a very long-winded explanation, but essentially, the team are going to jump onto the Security Council and disable the protocol DAO Guardian, and that's kind of like the last vestige of, um, uh, say, centralization, but it's the kind of last thing from bootstrapping the protocol back in the day.
Yeah, two quick follow-up questions for that. Honolulu and Trading posted, I think, a link to a recent transaction that said RP Core has joined the Security Council. And I guess the question is, wait, didn't you guys already join the Security Council, or is that some pre-event maybe? And then, oh, that's on Hoodie. Oh, I got it. Okay, thanks, Honolulu. So I guess you're practicing for it in real time. And then I guess the second question I have is, once the PDAL Guardian is retired, I guess that's a one-way activation, right? Once it gives up its authority, it's there's no undos from that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So, well, I mean, the only way to undo would be for an ODAL upgrade, but yeah, essentially it's a one-way operation. Um, so we as a core team we can't undo it, um, uh, so it's essentially all on the kind of like ODAL. Anyway, the idea it's always a one-way process anyway. So at some point we'll probably upgrade that kind of like feature away, so because we don't need it anymore. Um, but yeah, so it's a one-way kind of like thing. Yeah, I wondered when Halulu was going to post that. I was expecting that to kind of like happen. So yeah, so as you said, we are going through the process as we would do on mainnet, but on testnet. So we're just going through that process and setting it up, yeah, testing our kind of like internal processes and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, perfect. Then kind of looking at some of the other governance items that were in the bi-weekly. I don't know if we'll cover all of them here on today's call, but there's a couple that maybe it'd be worth having your time to comment on a little bit. I mean, for one of those, there was a little bit of discussion on RPIP 71, which was kind of the idea about creating some type of guaranteed redemption rate for rETH. So like right now, if the protocol pools are empty, an rETH holder that wants to redeem has to do it at market rates, and there could be either a surplus, which is great, or a discount, which is not great when you're redeeming. And there was some thought about creating a mechanism to allow or force validator exits to always make certain that there is at protocol rate liquidity available. Do you want to comment a little bit about that? And I saw you had posted in there about maybe the conflicts with Saturn timing and so forth. Any thoughts you want to share with the community, or help educate us a little bit about the pros and cons of doing something like that?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, the main issue is that um, when there's a kind of like an outflow, which there, it's kind of like there's I guess waves. So you will get wave of inflow, wave of outflow. When there's a significant wave of outflow, um, we kind of rely quite a lot on um, market mechanisms. So the liquidity that we have in market, which is why we incentivize a lot of the liquidity, um, uh, and also the kind of like ARB, the rocket ARB type stuff to incentivize node operators to exit. Um, that is mainly because that's kind of how we kind of like think it should be, but then also we didn't really have a way to exit people based on liquidity anyway. One thing it really does do is it does put pressure on the rETH peg not having a way for rETH to basically have rETH exits. It does put pressure on the peg, and the peg is quite important because it's kind of our product. So, and without the without solid rETH demand, there's not the node staking side either. So it has to kind of like work in harmony. So one of the things that the community have been talking about, and also we've been getting kind of involved in, is to have some way for an rETH holder to signal that they wish to, exit, and then if there's not enough liquidity to meet their needs, that we exit node operator validators to meet that withdrawal liquidity. So I think that element of it is quite important in the sense that probably the first line of withdrawal liquidity is we have a liquidity buffer, right? We have a withdrawal liquidity buffer in the system at the moment. The only real issue is that it's got saturated by the kind of like the outflow. And as soon as there's a discount, then there's basically no withdrawal liquidity because of the arbitrage, which is good. The arbitrage is good, but it does mean that we don't end up with no withdrawal liquidity essentially. So there's one thing coming up in Saturn where all new deposits will actually go into the withdrawal liquidity first. The other thing that feeds into the withdrawal liquidity is rewards and that sort of thing coming back from node operators. So in Saturn 1, we will actually have 2 streams of ETH going into that withdrawal liquidity to kind of like bolster that liquidity. From our perspective, that should probably be that's the first place that we should be sourcing liquidity from. But then if that runs dry, which hopefully in Saturn 1 will be less likely, but if that runs dry, then really we do need to kind of like exit validators to meet that requirement. So so there's essentially an RPIP up to figure out how we would prioritize the validators that we exit, because we can exit them now with EIP 7002, and so that's what we're kind of like working on at the moment. So there's a little bit of talk about what that priority selection looks like, and that sort of thing. So yeah, so the team did a mini workshop on yesterday and talked through it. It's not trivial. The whole kind of like process. We've got a few ideas around how we would actually implement it, but it's not completely trivial. It needs quite a lot of work to spec out. So we are kind of like going to be working on it, and we'll that mini workshop is the first kind of like step. And I'm going to post some stuff in research today around what we discussed in the workshop, and what are the I guess key decisions, but also issues and potential solutions, and then we can kind of like talk through that in the research. So I would prefer that we iterate on that to create a full specification, so that we can because it will need to be ratified by the PDAO anyway, and obviously there are some bright minds in the community that we want to utilize on this as well. But a big thing is that this will be able to exit validators. So really, we need quite a strong general consensus on how it's going to work. So so that's that process. I don't think necessarily can be rushed, but we obviously want to make sure that we have a robust solution in place. So what I've kind of said is that we there was some talk about putting this into Saturn One. There is no way we can put this in Saturn One. It's too chunky for a start. It needs to be defined more deeply. So and not only that, but with Saturn One already has some stuff with this liquidity stuff in there. So I think it's and with the migration of mini pools to mega pools and that sort of thing, that can also affect the liquidity withdrawal liquidity situation. So what my preference is that we put it into the Saturn 2. So we've got a little bit of time to do that, but we've only got like a couple of months really to get a good solution in place or spec'd out. So that's what we're kind of like moving on that progress, but as I said, Saturn 1 is the priority, and I think we're probably too deep in Saturn 1 to put loads of time on this, but we will do like little bits as we go, and then get more and more as the Saturn work kind of drops off, which once we've done DevNet 3, that is when we'll have more time to kind of like spec out this stuff. So I think it's just slightly awkward timing with DevNet 3, but once we get past that, we should be able to start dedicating some more and more time to specking this out so that we can get it formalized and then voted in for Saturn 2. Again, long-winded, but hopefully that covers everything.
Yeah, no, it is. It is always interesting, and yeah, it must be very challenging, I suppose, when you said earlier you're kind of heads down. You got to make progress on Saturn One to keep it, on track or a month off track, right? And then you still have the challenge of trying to figure out. Sorry, the doorbell's ringing in the background here, but trying to figure out what time do you need to step away and be a little strategic and look forward, right? What questions do we need answered for Saturn two? What features do we need to add, such as the liquidity forced exits for withdrawals, and how do we start flushing that out so that as soon as Saturn one is ready, we can be productive on Saturn two. And yeah, I can imagine just the balance of time, especially on your part, between what you're doing on Saturn one versus breaking away enough to keep planning the road building in the months afterwards. Um, Lee had asked a question here that I think is really good, and it kind of ties into another item in governance, which is, has there been much discussion on exiting underperforming nodes, whether to maintain that liquidity pool, or there was another entry in the governance that was a report that was done about, MEV theft and neglected revenue. And, I think the census of that report, or the conclusion of the report, is there's not much, but there has been a little bit. And we'll still need a way to exit somebody or penalize somebody to recoup those missed rewards. But have you thought about underperforming nodes and how to exit it, and basically with the intent of whether it be for stealing or underperforming, ultimately, right? Rocket Pool sells a product, and that's rETH, and we need to make that as continue to have it become as highest quality product as possible. So, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things, a couple of separate things, right? So, in terms of underperformance, we spoke about that a lot yesterday. So, um, I think there's probably two situations, right? So there is a situation where a node operator is leaking, right? So it's not just that they're underperforming, they're not performing at all, right? So there's that situation where a node operator is leaking, and then there is underperformance with a particular threshold, right? And in terms of leaking, I don't think there's any doubt that we should get rid of those people because they're significantly they're not performing. So that we should be getting rid of them, right? And that can be quite easy as well because um, you can, in the sense that it's quite easy because there's like on-chain on-chain verifiable. So you can do like a balance proof essentially. If they're below a particular balance, then they're automatically ejected. So that so essentially we're just kind of like raising the ejection balance um, for it. So that I think is a no-brainer. I think we should be definitely doing that. Then you've got kind of like performance under a threshold, and that is probably quite subjective in the sense that where do you want that performance? Where do you want that to be? Um, are we relying on attestation data or balance data? It's a little bit trickier in terms of making it a verifiable thing. Um, so yeah, so there's a little bit of talk around that, and then there's also it's kind of like a balance because you still want to support home stakers who can be a bit they can have issues, but then uh, they should ideally be short-term issues, not long-term issues. So you want to kind of like make sure that you're only really kicking people with long-term issues, which is why I say the leaking is probably the better case to like kick people. Um, yeah, so there's a little bit of talk around what that kind of threshold should be because there is definitely a trade-off somewhat with that. And there's probably two things with that. Um, there's a trade-off in terms of supporting kind of like home stakers, and then there's also a trade-off of people do have short-term issues, so you need to kind of like still cover the short-term issues. But anyway, I've already said that. So there's those elements. That's the performance element. In terms of the stealing, so yeah, Saturn 2 already has some stuff in there around that. So the ODAL can actually penalize stake based on can actually penalize stake. There is a guardrail around that, but it is there. I'm not a massive fan. Again, it's a trade-off. Uh, yeah, again, it's a trade-off. I think we need to have some mechanism so that it's always been that we need some mechanism to prevent like large scale stealing. The majority of cases that we've seen so far have not necessarily been scale stealing. That it's been kind of like smaller, like accidental stuff. But we do have to have a mechanism in there to kind of like do that. So Saturn 2 does actually have that mechanism built in. I think we've already coded that up for Saturn 1, so it's already in place. But yeah, so they're kind of like the things. So I mean, from a team and a protocol design perspective, the ideal for us is that uh, we we still support node operators having short-term issues, but people with long-term issues, should be exited. They're significantly underperforming. That's a no-brainer. But ideally, it should be very like a verifiable process rather than just the ODAO doing it themselves. So that's kind of, but there's also that trade-off of it's easier to do it with the ODAO, but then you're putting more trust in the ODAO and all of that sort of stuff. So that's a very that's the trade-off that we balance every single time.
Yeah, no, lots of factors there. I will say from being an active participant in node set, I don't see them quite like I think home stakers can actually have a very effective APY, right? I mean, I run my nodes at home. I know they go down. I know I have internet problems. My internet sucks here where I live. But it's still a very good percentage uptime, and it can be done. There are I won't call us professional node stakers, but I would say dedicated hobbyist home stakers. And I think Rocket Pool's in a position personally where we have such a large node operator set that, setting some minimum performance level would be good. And it could just, to me, it's okay if we just select very well performing and dedicated and node operators rather than ones that might be a little flaky. I just want to follow up on a question that Honolulu asked as well too, and maybe you mentioned it in yours about, the minimum ejection balance, right? And I guess I didn't think about this that Rocket Pool could do that perhaps internally now with execution initiated withdrawals as part of Pectra here. But maybe can you comment on that a little bit? At first, I was thinking maybe similar to what he proposed, which was, hey, the Ethereum protocol has a minimum validator balance, which is 16 effective ETH. And that, and the beacon chain will just auto eject you. And I think I saw some posts, maybe even one of them was by Vitalik, if I remember correctly, that had said, hey, maybe we should increase that to like 31 ETH, right? So that way a validator, especially home validators that for whatever reason might have abandoned their node, don't lose half their stuff. Or in the case of Rocket Pool, it would be even more than the node operator deposit of 8 ETH, right? Or 4 ETH in our mega pools. So any thoughts about pushing Ethereum, or are you really just thinking doing it via the smart contract and execution layer withdrawals?
So I think, um, as you said, I think there was some interest from the Ethereum level in terms of increasing that ejection balance. Um, I, to be honest, I think it's probably easier for us to just do it ourselves, and then if the Ethereum if the Ethereum does it as later on, then that's great. um, so I see, yeah, because of the current mini pause. Yeah, I do think it's worth kind of going through that process a little bit. I do. I guess the thought of lobbying Ethereum again, uh, if I'm completely honest, it's so much work to it's so much work to kind of like lobby all the people that you need uh to get something done at the Ethereum level. I mean, maybe it's a little bit easier now because uh but I mean we can definitely raise it and connect up with some with the likes of Lido and that sort of thing to try to push it along. Um, but yeah, it is quite a lot of work to try to lobby Ethereum core devs and that sort of thing to do that. So I don't think I'm going to put my heart and soul, or sorry, no, I don't think I'm going to put my complete faith that that's going to happen. Um, but we can start that like discussion um, to see where that goes, and maybe that we light a fire and they do something, um, but we have to, yeah. I personally, I think we can do it with mega pools. We can't do it with mini pools, obviously, um, unless as other people have kind of like said, we have some sort of delegate that people move to that does include some of that stuff, but also has some sort of carrot as well. Um, that's an option. Um, I think out of the two options, creating a delegate that has some carrot and stick is probably easier than trying to uh, lobby Ethereum. But uh, as I said, there has been some interest on their side, particularly Vitalik was interested in doing it. But it depends on how it fits in with the with kind of like everything else now. Um, and I haven't got an idea about where it fits in with that. So um, they are trying to make it less risky. So maybe a higher injection balance, is a bit of an easy one to make staking less risky. So yeah, we can raise it. I know there's also been some pushback that you know people were thinking that staking or stakers have had a lot of the mind share in terms of the
The
Ethereum
EIP.
roadmap and that sort of thing. So, I, yeah, that also makes me slightly, I guess, not enthusiastic, but less confident that things will get through. So, but yeah, as I said, we can reach out to Lido and we can reach out to a couple of other people and see whether they will be willing to band together to push for something like that. And then maybe we can submit something together. And if it lights a fire, it lights a fire. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. I think we have to I've kind of gotten to the point where we've gone through this situation quite a lot, and sometimes it works out for us, but very often we have to code around things. So so yeah.
Yeah, no, I was, yeah, I basically agree with your entire thought pattern there. I mean, it might be worth something, Dev Connect's going to be happening in November. I guess we'll get a better sense of, I guess it's Fukasa here is the next one coming up. But I too was hearing that there are so many wants, especially on the execution layer, to keep Ethereum competitive that I think the consensus layer is not going to, these are probably not high priorities for the EF and the core devs. But you never know, right? It's worth having that conversation. But I do like the idea of either us doing it in mega pools, which seems very realistic, but then perhaps giving an incentive, perhaps with the reward tree calculations and so forth, to have individuals either convert from mini pools to mega pools or convert over, where we could do, a higher minimum balance to kind of help maintain the APR. But let me look just because I noticed the time here. It's man, it flies by so fast when we're getting the updates here. But let me invite Mav back up here to just for any of the future maybe integrations and marketing items that are coming up that he wants to share about. I know Mav, you're in between two ETH events. If you want to share those with the community as well too.
I'm going to try and be concise because my voice is going a little bit. But yes, I am just out of ETH Dublin and in Prague for ETH Prague, starting tomorrow. So looking forward to that. I think I'll do a bit more of an in-depth recap. Hopefully, once my voice is a bit better on a future community call. But for Dublin, it was a smaller event, but the energy was great. There was a lot of talk about staking related topics as opposed to the, let's say, wider variety of content you might see at something like a token in Dubai or Singapore. Vitalik was in attendance too, which was cool. And then in terms of the bi-weekly, we've talked about Ronin. Liquidity V2 relaunched. That's definitely noteworthy. They unfortunately had a security issue, but that was resolved, re-audited, and re-released, supporting rETH there, which was great to see. And then, just as a heads up, we, as Leah's mentioned, making good progress on the Saturn 1 release. As part of that, there will be a little bit of marketing content going out. All going well, that will start this week. We have been waiting on a third party to try and coordinate some of this, and exchanges give us a little hand to amplify some of this content. Nothing major, but still great to see. We'll include a bit of a rETH DeFi push, which is obviously still being needed, even though we saw those great deposits come in recently. So this will be in the ramp up to the Saturn upgrade release. Obviously, the timing is pretty important when it comes to anything in terms of marketing. Once we get better kind of visibility on launch dates, gives us more confidence to start ramping up. This will also include a Medium article, which will be the first one for Saturn, and that is pretty much ready to go. So we should see that published within a week, so that'll be cool. And then some more content going out on Twitter and X. I think I'll leave it there and pass it back to you. But yeah, some cool things happening around Saturn and lots to look forward to.
Yeah, man. It sounds like it was a lot of fun. I hope you you get over this pretty quickly there. But yeah, ETH Prague looked like it had an excellent agenda and some great talks ahead. So I'm quite jealous about there. I won't have my next crypto. Well, I might make it out to permissionless just real quickly here in June. But I'm definitely looking forward to Dev Connect in November here. So yeah, I hope you get better, and maybe next time you're on, we can talk a little bit to see if the team has any plans to attend Dev Connect. And now we're going to be pretty close to where Fornax is, at least maybe just one country away. So that should be a pretty easy trip for him. But looking forward to having you back feeling better here. And then Langers, back to you. Anything else that we haven't covered yet on today's community call? I think I've been keeping up with the questions in trading. But anything else that we haven't covered that you feel is important for the Rocket Pool community to know?
I think that's basically all that's on my list. Yeah, I mean, Grant's also been working on a few things in terms of like different chains. Having a chat with the Uni chain about some stuff, and a whole bunch of other stuff which I've now forgotten. But yeah, so there's a few things going on there as well. Yeah, no, all the kind of like usual things. Yeah, heads down. Saturn is obviously the main thing. Yeah, no, it's been good.
Well, excellent. Well, again, thank you very much for taking the better part of an hour out of your schedule here today to just be with us here in the chit chat and for sharing the latest on Rocket Pool. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing your post and research and trading here. And certainly, yeah, I'm very excited to see what your kind of roadmap update will look like and see if it's going to be as optimistic as you were thinking on today's call, or if you by the time you pencil it out and plan it out, if you find there's a few missing things in there, I'm definitely looking forward to reading it. But yeah, at this rate, I think we're going to be closer to Saturn launch than we were the start of Saturn development. So starting to get a little exciting.
We're definitely excited. I think once we started kind of like playing around with it, it's really cool actually. So it's always good to kind of see it come into reality as it were. So yeah, no, it's really cool. We're kind of having quite a lot of fun building it. So yeah, it's gonna be very good.
All right. Well, Mav, I hope you feel better. And Langers, thank you very much. And with that, I think we'll conclude today's community call. I'll be hanging around a little bit afterwards and hanging out and trading as well too. So good day, everyone.
Cheers
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
Yeah.